it was at that moment when I realized, okay, my Spanish is not as good as I think it is. A lot of people actually believe that they can just do the app and not speak with anybody in the language and be good. I know exactly what I can teach you in 30 minutes that will get you the most results right now, so that after 30 minutes you can actually improve in a conversation than what you could do before the 30 minutes.
Even though you were immersing yourself, like how did you actually figure out how to form sentences and start speaking?
It's not something that happens in one go, right? It's not overnight, but I help my students with the mental block for sure, because it's part of...
Welcome back to another episode of the Darko show, and today I have a very special guest. As you can see, this is my double. No, I'm just playing. He's not a double. He's not my twin. This is my brother, Jordan. He's 4 years younger than me. And the reason why he's on the show, the reason why he made it to the show is because he can speak fluent Spanish, and he learned it in only 18 months. And he's now built a company with myself behind the scenes, and he's grown a TikTok to 460,000 people as of this recording, and teaching thousands of people around the world how to speak Spanish, and amongst other things too. So Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Estoy muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú?
Estoy bien, gracias. All right, so I guess people are wondering, like, how the hell did you, first of all, teach yourself Spanish from zero? Because you didn't learn, it's not like you paid a teacher to learn. Like, you taught yourself in England. So yeah. Talk about that story real quick.
Well, you want the short story or the long story?
I mean, we're here for a while, so whatever.
So, yeah, going back, what would it be, like 5 years now? Yeah, around about 5-6 years. I've always wanted to learn Spanish, basically. Like ever since, high school days, I always just thought it was cool, right? Before I got into reggaeton, before any of that stuff, I was like, well, it would be cool to learn Spanish. Sounds cool. Yeah. Lots of people speak it. It's useful. And I just, be kind of like a flex to be able to speak like another language that you learn, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to learn. I remember in GCSEs, so like here in England, obviously, if you're not from UK, like basically the last 2 years of compulsory education, I wanted to do Spanish on the class. And I remember there was a teacher, they used to call him Iniesta's dad because he looked like Iniesta, but another version from Spain. Yeah, I remember that guy. But there was no space on the class for me because I enrolled too late. So basically, I just couldn't learn. So then that led me to have to do it on my own, basically. And I was like 16, but 14 to 16, but then I didn't actually revisit it until into my 20s. So there's a piano right here. You can't see it, but I'm a piano player. So I play the piano, and I was contracted to play at a wedding in Marbella, and yeah, obviously in Spain. And at the time I was on Duolingo doing a bit of Spanish, especially because I was going to Spain, and I basically thought my Spanish was better than what it was, and it wasn't good. So when I got there, I will never forget this day. I was in a hurry to get to the hotel, and I was at the airport, and the people that were getting married, they were obviously paying for everything. They didn't get me a car, they gave me a coach, and it has to drop everybody off at their hotels from the airport. And I was checking the time, and I had to play the same day, and I had to shower, I had to I didn't even have toothpaste, like lots of things I had to go. I didn't even, had hand luggage, so I didn't even have deodorant and stuff. I had to buy all of that stuff in the shop. I had to iron my shirt, I had to shower, I had to eat, like lots of things, and obviously prepare myself mentally. And this coach driver was taking forever. Like he was just outside smoking a cigarette. Everybody got on the bus, and like everybody was on the bus. There were no more empty seats. And I was like, what's this guy doing? Like, so I was just like, no one was really saying anything. They were on holiday, but I got shit to do. So I went outside and I was like, hey, amigo, what's going on? But yeah, and then basically he said no English. So then I was like, okay, it was at that moment when I realized, okay, let's call a duck a duck. My Spanish is not as good as I think it is. And I know what I wanted my Spanish to be like. I wanted it to be where I can just have conversations with people and not have to worry. So from there, that was in 2017, I believe.
But what happened? Did you try to say something to him in Spanish, or?
Yeah. So I was like, let's go, like walk on, like hurry up. We need to get going.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no English, Español. And I was like, surely he must have understood that. And I tried to I remember I just went back onto the bus. I was like, damn, that's fucking embarrassing. Like,
So you couldn't say what you wanted to say, basically.
yeah, and then I just had to wait until he was ready to leave. Yeah, and it was at that moment I was like, wow, I need to do something about this. And obviously, I realized that the Duolingo and other stuff that I was doing was not actually helping. It makes you think like it's helping, but it wasn't.
So you were studying before
Yeah.
that Marbella trip,
Yeah.
and then once you got to that moment where you're trying to talk to the bus driver, you're like, oh damn, I can't speak.
Yeah, basically. So I've always wanted to learn Spanish, and of course, like I'm the sort of person I don't really want to go somewhere and not know anything
Yeah.
of the language, at least like a thank you or something, right?
Right.
But obviously, Spanish is very accessible, so I was like, okay, I should know quite a bit before I go. Let me at least try to get a few sentences under my belt so I can have small conversations. Blah blah blah. Try to become conversational before I leave, and so that's what I did. And bearing in mind, Spanish is something I've always wanted to learn, and then that's what I did, and yeah, it just hit me hard when I got there. Like, just okay, you don't know what you're doing. So then from there, I was just like, what, this is something that I've always wanted to do, and then it was like a wake up call. So the procrastination, it kept going. That was like the summer until like the end of the year. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I never really started it, but then like New Year's resolution, like all that stuff. It was 2018, and that's when I started to like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And that's when I just, obviously what I was doing before wasn't working, so I'm not going to do that again, right? It's insanity. So I found out other ways. I stumbled across some websites, very useful websites to learn Spanish with, to help you to learn Spanish. I got deeper into the culture, listening to like most Latin American music, especially reggaeton. I started like hanging out in Elephant Castle, a popular neighborhood in London for like Latinos. You got like they speak to you in Spanish when you walk in. So I started hanging out in those cafes and Spanish coffee shops. I started hanging out there more, speaking Spanish. I was dating a Bolivian for the majority of. It was around that time, around 2018. I was dating a Bolivian for the majority of that time, and like I was just on Spanish, and everything that I went through, the process, the trials and tribulations, all the obstacles, the ups and downs. I didn't really have a game plan to follow. I had to figure it out on my own. So I just took all of the wins and all of the positives and all of the things that went well and worked, learning on my journey to becoming fluent in Spanish. I took that and put it inside of my unique method, which is called the flowchart method.
Okay, so let's unpack that. So you basically went to Marbella, realized you couldn't speak, and then you went back to England. Well, you had a procrastination period.
Yeah.
You went back to England, and then you're like, all right, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
So then you just started speaking Spanish to people in general, or what was the process to actually figure out, okay, this is how Spanish works, this is how I'm going to do it?
So yeah, there's a procrastination period from summer 2017 until the end of 2017, and 2018, I knew what not to do with Duolingo, but I knew that I need to be speaking and practicing, and I knew that Spanish had to be in my life every day, right? I knew that much. Okay, if you want to lose weight and you're hanging around with obese people, it's gonna be hard, right? Because they're gonna be driving you to Burger King drive-through, and then you're gonna,
right.
or chain smokers, and you're trying to quit smoking, you're with chain smokers. It's hard, right? They're offering you cigarettes all the time. But yeah, it's the same with Spanish. So like, if you're just around English speakers but you want to speak Spanish, then you're just going to be speaking English most of the time, right? So I knew that much. I changed my phone into Spanish because I'd heard that before, and it's like, it seems like a good idea. Sometimes I changed it back into English when I didn't know what was going on. I had to book a flight or something. But I put my phone in Spanish. I started watching like Spanish Netflix shows, Mexican ones, Colombian ones, just Spanish language Netflix shows in general. It was like an excuse for me to like binge watch Netflix because it was like a unproductive activity, and now it's productive. And I started listening to music more. I remember that was when I discovered Ozuna, and it became one of my most, I think on my Spotify in like 2018 or 2019, like my most listened to artist was Ozuna. So I started listening to reggaeton more, and then that kind of led me to get closer into the culture. By trying to learn Spanish, I actually got more deeper into the Latin American culture, which I didn't necessarily know about actually before. I just decided to learn Spanish, but naturally it's kind of hand in hand, right? And but yeah, I had no real plan. I just had to figure everything out. But I knew that I needed to be around Spanish speakers. So I was, not like just, oh, you don't speak Spanish, I don't want to talk to you. Not like that, but like I was, actively trying to, if I found somebody that did speak Spanish, then I would like kind of gravitate a bit more towards that person, just so I could like strike up a relationship and start speaking more and more.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that, you immerse yourself, but there's a lot of people probably watching this, as you probably know, that they're already doing those things. They're already listening to the music, they're watching the YouTubes, they're listening to the podcast, they're watching Netflix, but they're still nowhere. So how did you progress out of that? Even though you were immersing yourself, like how did you actually figure out how to form sentences and start speaking?
Yeah, so from doing, that was... Yeah, basically, I knew that obviously immersing myself in the language is good, but it's not everything, because it gets you on the right track, but you need to obviously be, you need to know what the hell you're doing, right? So I figured to myself, all right, what I was doing before was just learning phrases like the woman's eating an apple, the parrot's eating the seeds, that kind of nonsense, right? Pressing like buttons like, oh, soul is sun, yeah, and give, like, that stuff doesn't work. So I knew that, okay, I need to, what is the fastest way for me to speak anything? To say something. And I know, so I started to study a little bit of language. I researched a little bit like fundamentals of like English, Spanish, etc. And I started to understand how language works, especially, Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese, Romanian. They're all very similar. So if you can speak one, you're going to be able to, it's be easy for you to learn the others, providing you understand the fundamentals of the language. So that's what I focused on, the fundamentals, right? Like obviously I just said I play the piano. It's the same with the piano. If you focus on the fundamentals of the piano, you actually only look at 7 notes instead of 88, because everything is in the structure, it's compartmentalized, organized, and then you look at less to do more, if that makes sense. So instead of looking at like Spanish and listening to the blah, 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 and just look, oh my gosh, you focus on what is present in every sentence. What are the main things that are in every sentence? Why is it that I know some words which I did, but I couldn't say a sentence? And it's because of the verbs. And this is what I talk about in the flowchart method, is the verbs are like 80% of everything. Every single sentence has one. Like I said, I'll give you $100 right now if you can tell me a sentence that doesn't have a verb in it. In English or Spanish, whatever you like.
Yeah, I like what you just said there.
Yeah, I'll give it to you right now.
Well, that's what I said.
That's why you like it.
That's what I just said. I said, I like what you just said.
Oh, okay, I like what you just said, but said is a verb. To say.
Okay, you got me there.
And I like is also a verb. So you got 2 in that sentence.
Right. Okay. So that's moving into another topic now. So you're saying that you broke down the sentences. So that's what helped you to speak.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So once you understand how a sentence works, then it's a lot easier for you to say sentences. And when you speak Spanish, what does that mean? That means you're speaking sentences. You're saying sentences. Whatever it is that you're saying, that person can speak Spanish. Why? Because they said a bunch of sentences in Spanish. Back and forth. So sentences are everything. So if you understand how to make any sentence, then that means you're speaking Spanish now.
And so just to clarify it for people watching, your flowchart method that you figured out through all this trial and error is based around that philosophy of focusing on sentences.
Yeah.
Because then once you're able to understand the structure of sentences, you can add in words and then make your own.
Yeah.
And that's how you're getting people to be conversational.
Yeah.
And that framework is not just for Spanish, right?
No. It's for, so Spanish is a Romance language. So it came from the Roman Empire, which is basically came from Latin, right? Ancient Italy. So, and then it broke down into, Latin then broke into Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, the 5 Romance languages. But then you do have languages like English, which is quite similar, but not the same similar. Not as similar as Portuguese, but it's quite similar. So somebody could probably even actually, they could use the flowchart method to study English as well. Actually, they definitely can. Even though it's not a Romance language, you definitely can. But if you want to learn like French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, like for sure, it works exactly the same. There are slight differences in, for example, in Portuguese, tú me puedes ayudar in Spanish is can you help me? But in Portuguese, it would be você pode me ayudar. So you put the direction in between the 2 verbs, but in Spanish, you put the direction at the start of the 2 verbs. If that makes sense. And then in English, it changes. Can you help me? Okay, so you put the direction at the end in English. So in Spanish at the beginning, Portuguese in the middle, English at the end. So there are small, subtle differences like that, which you would learn depending on which language you're in. But the general consensus stays the same. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm just thinking about what people are going to be asking at this point of the conversation. So they're understanding that, all right, if I want to speak a language, I need to learn sentences. So that means that I'm learning on Duolingo. I'm not learning any sentences, just learning words. You know, talk about the people that you've seen, you know, with streaks and stuff.
Yeah, the streaks. Oh my gosh, I got a friend actually. Like in 2022, I was in Medellin, and he's using the streak. He had like, I think at that point he had about 100 days. He was like 3 months or so in. His Spanish was okay. His Spanish was not that bad, to be fair, but I told him, he was like, "Wow, your Spanish is great." Da, da, da. Like I want to be like, how did you do it? Da, da, da. And obviously, I told him everything I'm telling you, flowchart method, etc. And I said, "Yeah, Duolingo. I mean, I've been there too, but it's just trash. Just delete that. It's in any language, it's not going to help you, right?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I think I should. Yeah, yeah." Fast forward 2 years, I've seen him again, 2024. He's still. We were out getting some food, right? And it was like 11:55 or something at nighttime. And he's like, oh damn, I gotta get my streak. I'm gonna lose my I got like over 1,000 days, or I'm nearly at 1,000 days. He was like 900 or 1,000 or something. Like he was like, I did the math. It was like 3 years basically. And I was like, bro, like I told you 2 years ago, like when you were like a few months in, like he says, yeah, I know, man, but you know, I can't lose my streak, man. I was like, no. So I was like, it's not like you don't know, it's like you do know.
Yeah.
So imagine you got the maths test and somebody gives you the answers and you're like, oh, those are the answers. Oh yeah, no, but I'm gonna just like, bro, you have the answers. Why are you so? But yeah, he some people, I kind of, it's like a drug. I call them drug addicts. But yeah, the Duolingo is cool to introduce you. You know, it gets your feet wet. You know, there's no harm, I guess, if you're going to download it for the beginning to, you know, get some words or whatever to make yourself feel good. But if you really actually had like a deadline, for example, and there was like serious consequences if you didn't meet the deadline, you wouldn't choose Duolingo. And a lot of people, you know, they've come to that realization. Some of them don't, but a lot of people just stay using it. And the problem with it is that there are 2 or 3 problems. One of the main problems is it doesn't focus on conversation, right? So it doesn't matter how good you get from the app. There's no emphasis on conversation. There's nothing there that is anything related to conversation. And a lot of people actually believe that they can just do the app and not speak with anybody in the language and be good. It's kind of like, you know, you can't learn to drive if you just watch videos and read books if you don't get in the car. You know, like you can't, you know, those guys that watch UFC and they're like, oh, you should have put him in a rear naked choke, or oh, you should have done a Kimura, or oh, why didn't he do the takedown? Like, bro, like you're just watching. You don't train it. You don't know how to. You think you know how to do it, but you don't know how to do it.
Right.
Because if you got in the cage, you just die.
Yeah.
It's just the same kind of thing. So yeah, there's no emphasis on practice, and practice is paramount. And then the second one is like, what actually they're actually teaching on there is quite irrelevant. You know, it's just generic stuff, like the woman's eating an apple, the parrot's eating seeds, like the shark has legs, like just random phrases, and it doesn't go in depth. So for example, let's say a phrase that is really irrelevant. The parrot is eating seeds. I've never said that in English apart from when I'm just saying it now. But for example, they'll just teach you what that means, and they'll be like, oh, okay, cool, and you know that phrase, but you only know that phrase and you're never going to use it. But you would say, maybe you would say the parrot one time, maybe, but probably more often than not, you would say is or eating. Those you're going to say a lot, right? Eating, you can say that every day probably. But where I could teach you the same phrase and I would teach you how to use the verb eating and how to understand how the sentence works. The parrot is eating the seeds. So now you can say, I am eating, she is eating, we are eating, they are eating, they will eat, they are gonna eat, blah, 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 right? I can take a sentence that is irrelevant and just nonsense, and I can break it down to the point where you understand why that sentence, even though it's an irrelevant sentence that you'll never use, but I'll break it down to the point where you will understand how that sentence works. And if you understand how that sentence works, now you can create a similar sentence that is relevant and that you would use whenever you want to use that, if that makes sense. Rather than just showing you, oh, this is what this is, remember that. But I'm going to tell you why it's like that. And I'm going to go into more detail. And then that means that I don't need to teach you like 400 more phrases. I can just make you understand that one phrase very, very well. And then you can make your own 400 phrases.
Right, okay. So I understand that. So you can make your own phrases out of these sentences, right? Your own sentences. But what is the steps? Like, what are the steps to becoming conversational? First of all, let's say, how long does it take to become conversational? Let's break that down first.
90 days.
90 days.
Yeah.
So from saying hola to having conversations, like what do these conversations look like? Like, give me an example of conversational for people that don't know what that means.
So an example of conversational.
Yeah, like what does it mean to be conversational?
Yeah, so conversational is like, just even today I had to go to the doctors, pick up something for my mom, for our mom, and yeah, I even said like that is conversational. I had to go in there. I said, oh, I'm here to pick up something for my mom. So, oh, okay, what's her name? What's her date of birth? Her name is blah, blah, blah. This is her date of birth. Okay, cool. I see here on the system. Just hold on a second. Okay, sure. Oh, here it is. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, have a nice day. Yeah, you too. Bye bye. That is an example of conversational. You know, let's say you were in Barcelona, or you're in Buenos Aires, you're in Cancun. Or Cancun, you probably speak English, but you're in Mexico City, and you have to go to the doctors and pick something up because your doctor back home told you need this, blah, 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 blah. So you go to the doctors, you ask a couple of questions, they ask for your date of birth, your name. That's very, very, generic. Ordering food in a restaurant, ordering fast food. You want to ask for some directions. You probably might be lost in another city. I asked for directions last year in Barcelona. Just small, nothing crazy. When I got to the airport, etc. Meeting a stranger, saying hey, trying to chat up a girl maybe at the bar, or just meeting friends, whatever. Introducing yourself, these sorts of things, checking at the airport, hotel, that's conversational. So you can get around, have small conversations anywhere up to 5 minutes. Okay, and 5 minutes speaking in Spanish is a fair amount of time. In English you might not think, but in Spanish it's a fair amount of time. A lot of people can't even last 20 seconds. All right, so anywhere up to 5 minutes in conversation, and also small scenarios, different types of scenarios, but nothing too crazy. But you're able to get around to the point where you're like, let's say you go on holiday with a group of 5 friends, and you go traveling around Latin America, or you go to Spain or whatever. However long you're there for, your 4 other friends don't speak any Spanish past hola, una cerveza, por favor. Like that's the limit, right? But you know a bit, and quite a bit, right? You know that you're conversational, but to them, you are the guy that speaks Spanish. Oh yeah. He speaks Spanish. Whenever somebody says, oh, what's he saying, Jake? What's he saying, Tom? Like, and then you're the guy that has to speak. And so you know that you're conversational, but to them they'll think you're fluent because they don't even know. They'll see you speaking conversation, and to them you speak Spanish. It's not until you become conversational you realize there are levels, right? But that's conversational, and that's easily attainable within 90 days.
For anyone?
Yeah, for anyone. I mean, obviously some people are going to learn at different speeds. Some people will learn faster, but providing you do the things that I tell you, and you're practicing as much as I tell you to practice, and you're using the content that I'm teaching, whether it may be we have a video course, whether it may be you're going through the videos that I've made in the Flowchart Method course members area, or if you're doing one-to-one sessions with me or one of our coaches, if you're doing exactly the things that I'm telling you to do, and you're studying efficiently, and you're practicing as much as you should be, you will become conversational within 90 days. And yeah, the better your memory is, or the more hours you put in, could be 2 months. Could be 1 month maybe if you're that fast, but within 90 days, everyone will be within 90 days.
Okay, so all right, so you say conversational in 90 days, and you just broke that down for us. So what about the techniques to get there? So like, what are the steps? So like, step 1 is like phrases. What's the flowchart method steps to get conversational, so people can understand? Like, all right, how does this actually work?
Yeah, so I'll just tell you like what we have in our members area for the video course. So for example, in there you'll see step number 1 is all about small conversations. So about the most common phrases that you're going to use when you introduce yourself to somebody, because around about 70% of the time I've experienced it, like you're meeting new people in Colombia and you're saying the same things, even in English and Spanish, you're saying the same things. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? What's your name? How old are you? And I'm going to ask what you do. You're going to ask what I do. Those kind of things, right? So there's that. And then there's also like I just told you, ordering fast food, asking for directions, and for example, in the members area, we have like interactive videos. I've got a couple on the TikTok, but there's like way more in the members area and longer, where like I'm speaking and you'll see the writing on the bottom, and then I'll pause, and then the writing for you will appear in a different color. Then you can speak, and then it's like a back and forth conversation with me and the gaps, and then you've got the transcript. So we've got a lot of those for asking for directions, ordering food, checking in the hotel, etc. Common scenarios that you will have when you when you're probably going to a country that speaks Spanish, even if you're in your own country speaking Spanish, common scenarios that you can use.
Okay, so that sounds like step 1, and then what's step 2 and 3?
Yeah, so again, sorry, I didn't really clarify too well. Step 1 is all about phrases, the most common phrases. So it's more remembering, right? So it's more remembering rather than creating, all right? And it's basically the fastest way to get you some gains. Because what you don't want to do, I've taught the piano for a good few years, and obviously now teaching Spanish for almost 2 years now. What you don't want to do is, give people, you don't want to be doing something where you're learning something new, you're putting in all the hours and your energy and your resources, and then you're not actually getting the results at the beginning. As soon as you start something new, you want to see results because that's why you did it, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about getting results, fast results that you can actually use. Okay, you spent an hour today. Let's say you go outside and you're in Spain. Straight away, you can actually use more than what you knew before in that previous hour, right? It's like fast. To get you started really fast. But again, it's all about remembering in step 1. And then in step 2, yeah, like you said, so step 2, now we start remembering phrases. That phase is finished, okay? Now we move on to, okay, let's start to create our sentences. Because in a conversation, you kind of sometimes know what you're going to say, but you don't actually know you don't have a script to follow like a film. So you don't actually know what you're going to say. You kind of know what you might be talking about. Sometimes you might not, but it's all about being able to create on the spot. So step 2 is all about, we use 14 words that will enable you to say what you want to say in the present, future, and past. All right. It's not the only way to say things in the present, future, and past, but it's the easiest and fastest way to say stuff in the present, future, and past. Not just using I, because a lot of people say, oh, I can only say things for I this, I that, I this, I that. In Spanish, it changes. If I say I this, you that, we this, every single word usually changes. So it's quite a lot to remember. But we show you how to do it with using 5 different people. So I, you, we, he, she, they, etc. All right. And it's all about creating sentences. Vocabulary, it comes as you make the sentence. Okay. Vocabulary is like the side dish. It's the asparagus. You don't go to the restaurant saying you want asparagus. You want the steak. The asparagus comes with it, right? It's kind of like that. So when we make our sentences, the verbs is the other steak. When we make our sentences, we stick focusing on the verbs, those 14 words, and we mix and match them, and then we add in the vocab when we need it to help continue and make the sentence, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. And that's anything more to that?
Yeah. So step 2 is nothing crazy. Like, for example, I don't know if you've ever heard the term conjugations, but that's like the Superman has his kryptonite. It's like the kryptonite for everybody that when it comes to learning verbs, they're afraid of learning verbs because of the conjugations. For example, I'll give you an example. In English, the verb to do, we can say do, doing, did, does, done. Did I say that? I don't know. There's about 5 or 6 different.
Doing,
did, done, does. Do. Yeah, it's about 5 variations, right? Of the verb to do. In Spanish, there are about 40. Right. So, yeah, there are 25 main ones, 3 different types of forms. Then you're going to have another 5 in the subjunctive and another 5 in the imperfect. There are about 40. Yeah. And it can get a bit confusing. So a lot of people, when it comes to verbs, they just freak out. They see the grid form that you might see in some verb tables, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this looks crazy. Yeah. But again, those 14 words that we use, we're still not even going into those conjugations, but you can still say things like, I am in the house with my brother. We are speaking right now. Just using those 14 words and then some vocab that you would just pick up. So it's nothing crazy still, but it gets you to a very, very advanced point, to the point where people will think like, you can speak Spanish, wow. But you know that you're just not even conversational yet because you're only at step number 2. But it gives you a lot it's kind of like 80-20. It gives you so much with so little, before you start tackling those conjugations, which will take your Spanish, of course, to another level. But before then, there's no point trying to do that when there's so many more easier things that you could do that gets you lots of gains.
All right. Okay. So that's step 2, and then what's the next step?
And then the next step, step 3. So we do look at the conjugations, but in a different way. I will break it down for you in English. Every single verb gets broken down for you in English, so that you really understand what's going on. For example, do you know the difference between ate and eaten? Because for most people that's just past, but there's a specific reason why you'd use one and not the other, and this one, or this one and then not the other. But it's important to know that in English.
Have you eaten, or I ate?
Right, that's it. Okay, I ate is a conjugation, eaten is not. So basically, I ate, you're only just using the verb to eat, but I have eaten, you're using a secondary verb, have, and then you use eaten afterwards. You can't say I have ate, that's incorrect English. So little things like this will make people understand, you know?
Right. So as you're saying that, that makes me think about English, and wow, do I actually understand English?
Right.
Because obviously I'm a native, so I didn't really think about these things.
Yeah. So in step number 3, it's all about understanding the sentence structure and understanding English. A lot of people say, oh, I would have. No, I would have. Because again, you're using a conjugation of to have. I would have. Right? I don't want to get into the nitty gritty too much here, but kind of like, for example, in English, you can say, oh, when I am 50, I will buy a house. When I am 50, I will buy a house. And you can say, I am 50. Those are both I am. In Spanish, those am words change. One of it will be am, the other one will be different. But you need to know why.
So you're saying that you need to know English to study Spanish?
Yeah.
So I can't learn Spanish without better learning and understanding English?
You can, but it'll be longer and it'll be a bit more of a headache for you, because Spanish with the verb, okay, Spanish is made up of sentences, just like English, all right? Every single sentence has a verb. So when people say, I can say a lot of words, but I don't know how to say a sentence, because they don't understand the verbs, all right? So when it comes to learning the verbs, the verbs are obviously very important. That means the verbs are very important, right? Would you agree? So, okay, you're going to tackle the verbs now, but if you don't understand how verbs work in Spanish, in English, sorry, it's going to be like a million times harder in Spanish. Because remember, I told you 6 different variations of a verb in English, but 40 in Spanish. So if you don't even understand the 6 and how they work together in English, how are you going to understand the 40 in Spanish? You know, it's just gonna be too much for you.
So how do you? I mean, this sounds kind of complicated. It sounds not complicated, but it sounds like a lot, right? So for someone watching, they're probably like, "Oh, bloody hell, that's a lot. I don't know if I want to learn that." Maybe they're thinking that. Or maybe they're like, yeah, that's why I don't speak it, because I've been learning for years and I can't do this stuff, right? So how do you simplify it for people?
Yeah, so it is a lot. That's the whole point. And that's why most people fail, because it is a lot. But the way that I do it, I'm very logical. I like to break things down into small chunks, bite size, so it makes it easier, right? So I tell you, look, okay, let's take a look at sentence, any sentence. I'll even upload the Guardian or the Telegraph, all right, the New York Times. So just pick a sentence out of there, right? And let's break that sentence down in English and see what's happening. I will show you the layout of a verb and what each different parts of the verb consists of and what the names are, like whether it's past tense, present tense, conditional, etc. So you have a clear structure of what it is, and that is in English. And we start looking at the sentences in English, and we show you how to understand and recognize and spot different parts of different verbs and why it is these 2 verbs are back to back and lots of different things. I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty because we'll be here all day, but I help you understand it in English. So then when we go over to the Spanish, everything makes a lot of sense. Okay, so understanding the sentences and the fundamentals of the Spanish language is important, but it's easier to do it in English than Spanish, right? So let's do it in English first so you can understand it, and everything pretty much translates over into Spanish. Sometimes it's the red car or the car red, like little things like that, or the O or the A on the end, depending if it's a masculine or feminine word, little things like that, sure. But the main course, yeah, that is understanding English and then translating it over into the Spanish.
Okay. So what about the people that you've taught? Like, have you had any success, or?
Everyone's had success. Yeah, loads of success stories. So you might see, if you've been onto well, if any viewers have been onto the TikTok and Instagram, they will see at the top, as of now, pinned Lucy Bronze. So she's an England footballer for the national team. She won the Euros, World Cup finalist. She's won 5 Champions Leagues with 2 different teams. So, and she was playing in Barcelona for 2 years. And we were, in early part of this year and back end of last year, we were doing sessions together, and she wanted to learn Spanish to obviously playing at Barcelona to help her out, and she did great. We did about 4 months of sessions. 4 months of sessions, a couple of weeks in person, and now she now plays in London as of now, and she translated for one of her Colombian teammates live on BBC Sport, and her Spanish is great now. She did a farewell video she left Barcelona. She did a farewell video in Spanish, like over a minute long, just in Spanish on the beach. Like, Spanish is amazing now. And so it's obviously not just her. Another one of our students is Craig. He's 57 from the southern part of the USA, and his wife is from Mexico. She speaks English, but her family do not speak any English. And he did really well. He's been with us. He initially did 3 months, and then he renewed a couple more times. And now his Spanish, even after about 3-4 months, his Spanish was already really, really good. And, he'd been learning for 4 years. He said he actually almost gave up, and he'd been learning for 4 years. And he just wasn't getting anywhere. I remember our first session actually about "Hola, ¿cómo estás? Mi nombre es," or "¿Cómo te llamas?" That was literally about as far as he could get.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Damn.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. When I was actually, I thought he would be a little bit better than he was, but no, that was his level. And through the flowchart method, going through everything that I've just spoken to you about, eventually it grew, and to the point where, he's saying things like, he messaged me like just in between lessons or on the lesson, and he said, yeah, like my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law that I haven't seen for like a year or whatever in Mexico, they came over, blah blah blah, and they're like, wow, like, because obviously a year ago you couldn't speak Spanish, and now like fast forward, they're like, wow, like, you're Spanish, tu español as well, and like calling in his wife, like, come listen to Craig's Spanish, like, because before he'd just sit in the background at, he'd say, hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks, yeah, I'm good, and that was it, and he'd just sit in the background, and his wife would have to translate for him. They would make jokes, and like, you can't really like translate jokes live. It's just not really gonna work, right? So you just sitting there, and I've felt like that before, and not obviously in Spanish, but in other languages, where it's like everyone was speaking a language, and you're just actually the other day I went out with my Portuguese friend, and everybody was Portuguese and Brazilian speaking Portuguese, and I was just like, oh, this is long, bro. and I even know a little bit of Portuguese. I probably know more Portuguese than he did in Spanish. It's still it's not a vibe. So, but yeah, he made great progress. Now he's beyond conversational, and he says I changed his life because he sees his family about twice a month because they live very close to the border. He lives close to the border in the US, and they live close to the border in Mexico. So he sees them often and frequent. He said something which stuck out to me. He said, I've known my brother-in-law for 6 years, but I don't know him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I can imagine how that is, because you see him all the time, like you vibe. I think he plays music, he plays drums, and his brother-in-law plays the guitar, so they like to jam together and stuff. But that's a way that they can communicate, luckily, with the music. But before, obviously, he can speak Spanish now. But yeah, he said, yeah, I've known him for like 6 years, but or even longer, I think it was. But I don't know him. Yeah, and now he can speak with all of his in-laws, and yeah, because the majority of them don't speak English. Yeah. Especially her parents as well.
Wow. So now he's able to speak forever, basically, in his conversation with them.
Yeah. He says, bro, we were speaking for hours. I was like, well, hours? He was like, yeah, we were speaking for hours. Like,
damn.
Yeah, it was cuñado, his brother-in-law, his wife's brother.
Yeah.
And we've got even within a few lessons. My latest student, Abed, he's from Abu Dhabi, but he lives in Marbella in Spain. He lives between Marbella and Madrid, and he has businesses in Spain. And within the first 3 lessons, he says the restaurant that he goes to every week, they noticed the change in his Spanish. So his Spanish was a little bit better as an entry level, but the waiter that serves him all the time in the restaurant noticed the difference already, saying like, oh, you're using like haber, you're using like a little bit more complicated stuff, because I helped him understand. Sometimes he would say stuff in the past, but like the wrong variation of the past, right? Like there are 40 variations for every verb, like I said, and he might say one of the wrong ones, but it's still in the past, but it's just the wrong one. And I help him understand where he's going wrong and make sense of what he's doing. And now he understands a lot of what he's doing. So even just after the first few sessions, he's already noticed a massive difference. And he's been studying Spanish like with different teachers, different courses. Like he's been in Spain for like 7 years. He even did it in high school, Spanish. And within the first few lessons, I helped him understand the structures better to the point where he could actually make sense of what he's saying, and he made an improvement. So yeah, lots of success stories. I teach one-to-one, and it's not just that. We also have our coaches that teach the same flow chat method that I created and I teach. And we also have success stories from the role play that we do every single week, where a lot of people don't have the opportunity to practice speaking with people because they don't know anyone that speaks Spanish in their friendship group or their network, or maybe they're just a bit shy to talk with strangers. So they did a role play session every week with one of our coaches. I did it for like a year, and now we've got one of our coaches doing it. It's an opportunity to like practice with other speakers, other people trying to learn Spanish with a native Spanish speaking tutor who is also a fluent English speaker. So it's a great place to practice speaking and also learning Spanish. And we have Victoria from there. She's from Victoria. When she started, she was 25, from Liverpool. And she was showing up every week. She was showing up every week consistently, and she was going through the course as well. She never did one-to-one sessions, but she just used the role play and doing one-to-one, and she was just doing the role play and going through the course in her own time, the video course that I made. And I remember just over the months, I was noticing the improvements. She's conversational, she's beyond conversational just from using the course and showing up to the role plays on a weekly basis over several months. And it's really, really good. So we've got a lot of success stories for our role play sessions, one-to-ones with the coaches and one-to-one myself.
Cool. So that's good for people to know that, this works, because
Yeah.
if I was a new person watching this video, I'd be like, well, does this actually work? Like, is there people that are actually getting results with this stuff? Because, Spanish, for a lot of people, Spanish is something that they've always wanted to do. Like you said, like you always wanted to do it, but then you didn't get around to it. And then when you finally did, you started to figure it out. But for a lot of people, all the solutions out there are kind of failing them. Like you and I both didn't know how much people weren't actually getting the results that they want in learning Spanish before we came into this industry, right? You thought that people just didn't want to learn Spanish.
Right, yeah. I was thinking this the other day, like, until like we started Your Spanish, I didn't actually realize the amount of people that want to learn Spanish. So many people want to learn Spanish. Like for me, it was just like, okay, this is something that I can do. I know, I can figure this out. Like, I like to bet on myself. Even if I don't have any right to, I like to bet on myself. So I knew, okay, I'm sure I can do this. I'm sure I can do it. And eventually I got there, right? But I didn't even realize when I did, because I was just like, every single day I was just doing bit. You don't really see until you look back, right? But so, I just thought, yeah, like, there must be lots of, other people that are just, going to speak Spanish, they're going to learn it. But like a lot of people are learning, and you wouldn't know about it. And a lot of people, let's say you didn't know that person was learning Spanish, and then you find out that they've been on Duolingo for 2 years, and it's like, fuck, like it's crazy. Lots of people are trying to learn Spanish, and it doesn't matter whether it's the person doing a 9 to 5 or the university student, or like we've had celebrities. We've been, obviously we told you about Lucy, not the only one. We've got Sharky, the YouTuber from UK Beta Squad. He's good. He's got a very good accent. He says sometimes people think he's actually Spanish because his accent is very, very good. And we've also got like Andy Answer as well. He's like super big in any advert that's in football and sports in general. It's probably his team that are doing it. So, it varies. There's so many different people from different backgrounds, different areas, different classes, nationalities, races, whatever. Loads of people trying to learn Spanish. And it's, it's literally after English is second in terms of people trying to learn it,
What are the main reasons why, in your experience, people want to learn Spanish?
People want to learn Spanish for, usually it's like 4 different reasons, right? So it can be more, but usually it's like it comes under 4 different categories. And in my experience, you have the first one, which is like our student Craig. He's learning because his partner speaks Spanish naturally. And whether she speaks English or not, but she's a native Spanish speaker. Sometimes the partner doesn't speak English, sometimes they do speak English. But generally speaking, the family usually doesn't necessarily, especially if they're back home. And the parents, that's a big one. If you can't speak to your partner's parents, it's huge, right? So you usually have the person who's learning because of their partner is a native and they want to get closer to the culture as well. And the second reason why people want to learn is it's what they call a no sabo kid, which until I got into the Spanish space, I didn't actually know what a no sabo is. But basically, a no sabo is somebody who grew up in a Latin American or a Hispanic, a Spanish speaking household, or they're of they're Dominican, Mexican, Spanish, whatever. But they don't speak Spanish. The family does, but they don't because they grew up in the USA or they grew up in the UK, Australia, and Canada. So they just grew up speaking English or whatever that language was, and they don't speak the mother tongue. So yeah, that's called an Osabo kid, stereotypically called an Osabo kid. And you get a lot of people, there are like millions of people like that in the USA, that for whatever reason they didn't learn it as a kid. And you can imagine how that is, right? It's quite painful. You say, oh, my surname is, what's your name? Oh, my name is Michael Rodriguez. Ah, ¿tú hablas español? Ah, ¿de dónde eres? Ah, yo, no hablo. Like, that must be annoying, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a friend in Medellin. His surname is Martinez, and he says, yeah, I can feel the pain in his voice when he says that, And he lives in Miami, So when he says his surname is Cuban, and it's painful for him because his grandparents came over and they were just like English, English, English. So his parents don't even speak it. Well, they kind of do, but yeah, he doesn't speak it. So yeah, that's the second people that want to learn Spanish. The third are people that are traveling. So a lot of people naturally will travel Latin America. They usually stay for like 6 months or something like that, going from Mexico all the way down to Chile, Argentina. So yeah, most of obviously those countries speak in Spanish. So it's very beneficial if every single country you're going to speaks Spanish that you obviously know Spanish. And a lot of people go into Spain as well. Some people go study. A lot of people study in Barcelona. Not just Barcelona, Valencia got universities, but in Spain in general, a lot of people, one of our students actually, she's going to be studying for a year at least in Barcelona. So obviously that's why she's doing sessions with us and she's doing very well. So you get a lot of people that go to university or just people that are traveling in general. Often people go backwards and forwards to the same place, or they're always visiting Latin American countries, or they're always going to Spain, or they got like a villa there and they go a few times a year and they want to, integrate a bit more. So yeah, of course, you don't really want to be in the place for a long period of time and not know how to speak the language. So that's number 3. And number 4, people that are learning for career reasons. So corporate, business, work. So if somebody's in business and they want to tap into the Latin American market or the Spanish speaking market, that's an extra 500 million. It's like 300 to 500 million people. No, Mexico's got like 130 million alone. Yeah, it must be about 500. Yeah. And even in the US, there are more Spanish speakers in the US than in Spain.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. And of course, facts are facts. There are lots of that aren't documented. There are lots of people that are there illegally. So that number is actually even higher. It's about 50, 60 million or something like that. That number is actually even higher. There are so many Spanish speakers in the USA. I think Miami is the only city in the USA where the first language is Spanish. My friend was there. He says everything is just in Spanish and English. Sometimes you walk into a shop, they don't even speak to you in English. Yeah. So yeah, imagine being able to increase your sales, increase your revenue by tapping into a market that's untapped, or it exists in the UK in the English speaking market, but nothing like that exists in the Spanish speaking market. You'll be like the only business, or for work reasons, people want to, if you can obviously speak 2 languages, you're going to get more job openings probably. So it's extra strengthening your CV. So many reasons in that field, in business and in work, in the corporate space and in the career space. Yeah. So those are the 4 reasons. Of course, there are other reasons why people want to learn, but they usually fall under one of those 4 categories. Yeah.
And what is the category that you've seen that people are most serious? Like, because there's a lot of people that say, oh yeah, I want to go to Spain or I want to go to Latin America and speak Spanish and learn, but they don't actually want to learn. They're not that serious. So what category of people that you just described are the most serious that really want to learn now?
Yeah, so what you just said, the ones that I'm going to go to Latin America, I'm going to be traveling, those are typically usually the most unserious. And it reflects, we hardly have anybody in all the time that I've been teaching Spanish that is wanting to learn Spanish for those reasons. Yeah, I mean, some people are very serious with that, but the most part, they're not that serious. And then you have like Sabo, who's the family, and with the partner, they're a little bit more serious because there's some longer pain there. There's love and there's family relationships, so it's a lot stronger. So those people used to tend to be a bit more serious. But the most serious are business people, people that want to learn for business reasons, people that want to learn for for the corporate space. They want to make more money, or they're losing money. Maybe they're losing money because they don't speak Spanish, which is that's even more painful than missing out on making more money in a market that's not been tapped into yet. But knowing that customers are literally falling through your fingers because you can't speak Spanish, or you don't trust anybody to do it for you, speak Spanish for you. It's one of our students actually experienced that. He said to me that because he didn't speak the language, he just trusted somebody to do all of the stuff for him, and it went south. Yeah.
Wow.
So hence the pain and the reason, the motivation to learn Spanish yourself. So you can, obviously if you can, it's like in music, if you can write songs, if you can produce, if you can make the beat, if you can mix and master it, you literally don't need anybody else. You keep 100% of the pie. But if you only know how to sing, and you don't know how to write songs, you don't know how to make the beat, you don't know how to mix and master, you might end up only with 15% of the revenue of the track, when you're the artist that everybody knows who sang it, compared to the artist who, like Russ, for example, who does it all himself. So he keeps 100% of the pie. And it's the same in business. Yeah.
What if someone's got a job though? Is that like, have you seen that to be someone who has a lot of motivation?
Yeah. One of our students, one of my one-to-one students in the USA, part of his job is player relations, and in baseball, for example, he's involved with baseball players. So whenever he's NFL, NBA, but whenever he's involved with baseball, you have a lot of Caribbeans, right? You have Dominicans and Puerto Ricans that play baseball, and it's big, and they've got a lot of stars in the MLB. So for him, it's important that he speaks Spanish. It's not necessarily imperative. Well, it is actually. It's not in the contract, but basically he needs to be able to, if you're going to encounter so many people that are speaking in Spanish in the baseball, and probably they don't speak English just yet, it really, really, really helps if you can speak Spanish and keep that job and, excel. Otherwise, maybe your boss will just find somebody else. So in terms of job security, yeah, it's big. It's big with job security.
Right. So what other things would you have to say to people about Spanish then? Like what are things that people struggle with the most when it comes to learning? Even if they're your clients, what are the biggest sticking points?
The biggest problems that my clients have, or that I've just witnessed in the space, is a lot of people, they don't have anyone to practice with. First things first, a lot of people don't even know that they should be practicing. Right? Some people know that they should be practicing. They think that they're practicing, but they're not, because they're just pressing buttons. So they know that they should practice, but they just don't know that they're doing it wrong. Some people don't even know that they should be practicing. They don't even know that that exists. They think that they can just read books on how to pick up a girl and watch videos on YouTube and know how to do it. Like, they don't even know that you need to go into the bar and talk to somebody and open your mouth, right? So practice is huge. Whether they know they should be practicing, but they're doing it wrong, whether they don't even know they should be practicing and they're not even doing it at all, or whether they are doing it correctly and they know they should be practicing and they know that they should be speaking with people either on the phone, FaceTime, or face-to-face like we're doing now, real life. They're just not doing enough of it, and they underestimate how much they should be doing. They're like, oh, I spoke to one person this week on Tuesday. Okay, but it's Saturday. Have you spoke to anybody else? Nah, I just spoke to that person for like 10 minutes. Okay, what about, like, if you didn't speak to somebody in Spanish today, neither yesterday, it's too long. Does that make sense? So if today is Friday, you didn't speak to anyone today, but you didn't speak to anyone yesterday, it was Wednesday is the last time you spoke, it should really be yesterday was the longest that you've gone, or Wednesday, but you don't want it to be a few days, So practice is the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones. Another thing that people struggle with is just, it's the sentence structure, right? Okay, a lot of people that come to us have tried to learn Spanish somewhere else and it's not working. We've very, very rarely going to get somebody who's never already tried to learn Spanish before, whether it be an app, whether it be another tutor, whatever. Okay, so the reason why it's going wrong for them is because they don't understand what they're doing. All right, everything is just unorganized. Imagine you got a puzzle, it's just all trashed on the floor. There's no organization. So the verbs and conjugation of verbs as well, but just understanding where to put all of the moving parts and organizing it. I help. One of the biggest things that I actually do with my one-to-one students, and what we do inside of the flowchart method with all of our students, whether it be me or role play or the course or one of our coaches, is we help you understand the moving parts, help you make sense of it in your brain, so you can understand it in English and then understand it also in Spanish. Because what happens is a lot of people know verbs. They know they should use this verb, they just don't know which one of the 40 variations they should use. They know they're different words, but they don't know the order to put them in. So we help you understand really what you're doing more than teaching you Spanish. Just because you're learning Spanish doesn't mean you're doing good stuff. You could be learning like gutter and oxymoron. These words, you don't need to know these words necessarily like at the beginning, okay? So just because you're learning Spanish doesn't mean that you're, learning what you should be learning. So yeah, we help people understand what they're doing. That's another big reason why people struggle, because they don't have the understanding.
So they're just going on these apps, or talk to us about hiring tutors, because some people are like, oh yeah, I can just hire a tutor. So in your experience, what's wrong with that?
Sorry, you're going to hire a driving instructor. You're just going to go, oh, I'll go with this one for a couple of lessons, see how he gets on, see how I get on with him. Oh, I might just go with her for a few bits. No, you're going to choose one person and say, listen, I want you to take me from here, I don't have to drive, to like, what is it, 2-3 months later, I'm going to be ready to do my test. I'm going to do my test. I'm going to pass it. And you're going to get me there. So there's a game plan. And he's basically promising you that at the end of 3 months, you're going to be ready to take your test and you're going to have a very high probability to pass your test. That's his promise to you. You can't promise that you will pass the test. It's kind of on you. But he's going to do it. If you follow exactly what he says or she says, you're going to be able to do it. Okay, you will pass your test. All right, and it's the same thing that we do here at Yospanish. We tell you that within 90 days, at the end of 90 days, you are going to be conversational, providing you do everything that we are telling you to do, and you're showing up every single day, doing the 30 to 40 minutes a day that you should be doing. After the end of 3 months, you will be conversational. Like, you will be conversational. It's that clear, it's that simple.
So you're saying 30 minutes a day,
yeah,
for 90 days, and I'll be able to speak Spanish.
30 to 40, around about 35 minutes a day.
So what is the breakup of that 30 to 40 minutes a day? Like, how much am I studying? How much am I practicing?
So if you're gonna study like 10 minutes, like studying, going over what you've already covered, you want to be doing about 30 minutes of practicing. So it's kind of like 25% studying and about 75% practicing. All right. Well, people obviously, they usually get it the wrong way around, or they're just doing 100% studying and 0% practice. That's not going to work. That doesn't work. You have to do things correctly. All right. So 25% to 75%, 30, 70, somewhere around there. Okay. At least like 3-to-1 kind of ratio. You don't need to be bogging yourself down with the material. It's the constant repetition of implementing that material that helps it to stick, not the other way around.
What if they're doing one-on-one though? Like, let's say they're doing like 2 hours a week with you or one of our coaches. So what does the practice look like then?
So all in total, you want to be doing about, let's say, okay, if I'm presuming you have a job, maybe you have kids, you go to the gym, you got other commitments. So you can't be, you might not be able to throw like 30 hours a week to this, but I mean, that'd be great if you could. But if you're doing 2 hours a week with me, for example, you can just do I always say at least the same. Okay, so if you do study an hour or 30 minutes, let's say you do 30 minutes studying, at least 30 minutes of practice. Like, at least. You don't want the studying to outweigh the practice. That's the minimum. Okay, so if you're doing 2 hours with me, I would say, yeah, 2 hours with me, 2 hours practicing on your own. Or not practicing on your own, but practicing with other people, like on your own, away from me, and practicing speaking, whether it be FaceTime on a phone call,
so they can do it, for
face-to-face.
example, in role play,
or on the role play, yeah,
or with others. What about
Exactly.
speaking to yourself in the mirror?
I don't know about that. Like, I personally never did that. You can. I mean, yeah, you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror. That's a bit weird. Like, I mean, you can just talk out loud anyway and just say things. But again, that's trying to simulate a conversation. So why not just do the conversation? It's the best way to it's kind of like somebody trying to figure out how they can make a cake healthy. Just don't eat the cake and just eat the steak and vegetables or whatever. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Is my motto. Maybe you could make the cake healthy where you're not eating any sugar, but just don't eat it. Right? So again, it's like the conversation thing. Like, yeah, sure, that you could do other things, you can do this, you can do that, but the best way to practice is and will always be having conversations. You know, and you know, we do that in a like you said, in our role play, we do that. It's very structured. So you get corrected. It's a judgment-free zone. No one's gonna make fun of you. Which is another big reason why people, I'll get onto that in a minute, but no one's going to make fun of you. It's a judgment-free zone. You know, you have a native teacher there with you who speaks fluent English, and you also have other English speakers learning Spanish. You've got both, and you can take it in turns with each other, and you can also, you know, be corrected. And it's very organized and very structured, and there's no nerves. It's chilled out. It's a nice chilled out environment. You make friends. And yeah, but again, that's probably like the most optimum way of practicing actually, because you actually get corrected. You get told when you know you can stop, you can pause, you can revisit what you just did, and you also practice in speaking. So it ticks all of the boxes. But yeah, like I would say, the next reason why, yeah, one of the biggest reasons actually, practice, but it ties into practice is the fear. The reasons why a lot of people struggle because of fear. So they may do like, I've even seen it in Colombia, people like learning English books. They got like a book like this big of all notes of English, and they do it every day. But then when it comes to speaking, they're just shy. They're like not even shy, like afraid. Like,
And they freeze.
yeah, oh no. It's like, but I'm like, why wouldn't, if an opportunity to speak English presents itself, wouldn't that make you excited? Or, okay, this is my chance to shine, or let me see if I can put like to the test everything that I've been doing. Let's see if I can put it to the test. Like, otherwise, if you shy away from having a conversation in the language that you're learning every time you have the opportunity presents itself, then why are you learning the language? Stop doing it. That's what I think. Like, you wanna learn Spanish, you wanna learn English, but whenever an opportunity presents itself to learn, to speak, sorry, and you're not speaking, you need to question yourself. Why am I actually learning this language if I don't want to do it every time the opportunity presents itself? Because otherwise that's just a vicious cycle that keeps going. You're not at the level that you want to be at because you don't practice enough, and you're not speaking when the opportunities present itself, and that's practicing. And if you don't practice and speak, you're not going to get to that level. So a lot of the times people don't want to speak because they know that their level is not, you know, where it should be or where they want it to be to have a conversation. But it's never going to get there if you don't actually open your mouth when the conversation presents itself. So again, like I said, it's a vicious circle.
Yeah, that's a huge point. That's a huge
Yeah.
point. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that as well. It's like, that's very logical and it's very simplistic, but it's crazy because it's kind of like when a fish is in water, it doesn't know it's in water until you take it out. So it's like, for a lot of people, it's like throwing water in their face, like, wake up, like, you're not,
Yeah.
you're not going to ever get to the level you want to get to if you're not speaking in conversation.
And yeah, so fear, anxiety, shyness, that's a huge one. It's a huge one. And I say, look, it's okay to be, you know, afraid, but where does the fear come from? Where is the nervousness coming from? It's coming from the pressure that you're putting on yourself. The fear of making a mistake, the fear of sounding funny, the fear of being judged. It's a huge one. And I always tell people, like, I've lived in Colombia for like almost 2 years, right? I've been to Spain so many times. And even I speak with so many Latinos here in London. So I speak Spanish like daily, right? I could probably count on one hand the times when somebody has maybe been like a bit pissed off with my Spanish or with my level, that it wasn't as good as they'd want it to be for this conversation to flow, or maybe they'd made fun of me or laughed at me, or I could see that they were kind of judging me or making weird remarks or faces. Like, again, I've been at this for years, like 3 times, maybe 3 times. And it's like, Latinos, especially Latinos, like Colombians are like, for example, the Colombians, especially like un abuelo, like a Colombian like over the age of like 50, 60, they're the nicest people on the planet. Like, they are literally like, it's like you running into your grandma or grandpa. Like, they treat you like you are their own. like you're just not gonna get that animosity, or you're not gonna be judged. They're not gonna make fun of you. It just, the only person that's judging is yourself. You're judging yourself because it's what no one's saying with that. You're saying that your level's not good, or that you not that good, or that you sound funny, or that they're not saying that. They actually they feel proud that you're trying to learn their language, and trying to, especially if you're trying to learn their culture as well. They feel flattered and sometimes inspired, because maybe they're quite often learning English or another language, and it's like, okay, wow, they're really trying to do Spanish, and I know Spanish they know Spanish is quite hard. It's got a lot of verbs, and it's got a lot of, it's quite different to English in at some parts with the masculine, feminine stuff. So, it's not necessarily the easiest language to learn. So it is quite tricky, and they know that. So they feel like I said, flattered and proud at the same time, and also inspired to, like, okay, I can try and do what they're doing. Let me try go harder with my English, or let me start learning English. So yeah, the fear, when you break it down logically, you don't have to be scared. And I touched on it just a second ago. The expectations. Lower your expectations. There's no reason to be placing such high expectations on yourself, because you're not Spanish, or even if you are, like, that's not your first language. Even if you are Mexican or Latino, and you grew up in the USA, for example, like no sabo, it's not your first language. Your first language is English. You speak in English from birth, in the school and in the house, everywhere. You speak in English. So it's like you, and a lot of people aren't even no sabo. So, like, you don't even have the right to be embarrassed or to be shy. But even if you are no sabo, you still, like, it's not your first language. Yes, you are Dominican. Yes, you are Venezuelan, Argentino, but it's not your first language. So lower your expectations. If I go to South Korea right now, and I go to Seoul, and I go down to Gangnam, I'll try to. I know that all I know is 안녕하세요, 안녕하세요, 안녕하세요. I think I said it right?
Yeah.
안녕하세요. And then the next one, how are you? Like, I half know that. That's about as good as it gets, right? But I'm not gonna beat myself up and, like, be, like, nervous to speak to somebody, because I know I don't know any. I'm not Korean. Like, I'm not Korean. Look at me, I'm not Korean. So why am I gonna put that expectation on myself? And again, fear and being scared to speak Spanish only comes from it comes from the expectation you're placing yourself. It comes from pressure. Pressure comes from expectation. All right. So when you see the FA Cup, the English football cup, some of us don't watch English football, but you got the big team, the LA Lakers, whatever, and the high school, college basketball team. Like, there's no pressure on the high school, college basketball team, because they shouldn't win, really.
Yeah.
They don't have any right to win, really. They're just a high school, college basketball team. LeBron James and the Lakers, or the Miami Heat, or the Golden State Warriors, or whatever, they're expected to win. So if anything, the pressure's on them, because everybody expects them to win. If you get what I'm saying. So when you take the pressure off, when you take the expectation off, the pressure comes off. And I feel like this is what a lot of people need to realize, and this coming to a realization in your own brain, that you're not expected to do anything. Any Spanish that you say is a bonus.
That's a good reframe for people, because, like you said, the fear, most people have that fear, and it's just the pressure they put on themselves. So if they have that reframe of, like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be good at this. And it's just, I think, actually going a layer deeper, it's most adults don't practice new things, right? So that's why they're not really in tune with this, like, the pressure aspect, just removing the pressure. When you, for example, I'm looking at your skate boots right now. He's got some ice skates down here. You can't see it, but he likes a lot of things, right? You like a lot of things. You like to, try your hand at a lot of things. Like you said earlier, you like to bet on yourself. So obviously you master the piano. The piano's out of shot. It's right here, and you do ice skating, football, obviously music, making music. So all these things you've had to learn. Rubik's Cube.
Come get that one.
Yeah. And now, obviously, TikTok, like learning how to build an audience on TikTok. Like, you know how to do that now.
Yeah.
You know how to teach Spanish, because before you started, you didn't really. This is another thing, right? It's like imposter syndrome. It's like you are good, but you think you're not good, right? So you were good, but you thought you weren't good. So then I was like, yo, you can do this. You're like, but it's normal, right? It's normal. Yeah. And everyone has to go through this, and we all struggle in different ways, but that's why coaching is important. And like, just how far you've come doing this is because you haven't put pressure on yourself along the way. You learn through this process of, like, oh yeah, I can actually do this. So then once you realize that, there's no pressure now. Like, when you have a client in front of you, you're not, like, worrying about, oh, can I teach them? You know, even though you do have that expectation, because obviously they're coming to you because you can teach Spanish. And talk about that as well, like, because I asked you what makes you different than others, and you said a really good analogy that I'd like you to share again.
What was that? I said.
You're talking about how Thierry Henry,
Yeah,
Zinedine
yeah, yeah.
Zidane.
Yeah. So for example, like this is kind of touches on what you said about like getting another tutor, for example. So here's the thing, right? You can get somebody who's good at what they do, but they're not good at teaching what they do. If that makes sense. So they could be an expert in their field and whatever it is that they do, but they just don't know how to teach it, right? So for example, for those of you that know football, or soccer, you know Thierry Henry. You might have seen him on CBS. So Thierry Henry, like one of the greatest players of the Premier League, amazing striker, played for Arsenal, won many trophies, personal awards, top goal scorer, etc. Like incredible, legend. He's a very, very great in what he does, like just an expert in what he does, like one of the best to ever play centre forward, like top class player. But when he went into managing, and there was no language barrier. He was in France. He was managing in France for Monaco. He almost got the team that is like a top table team. They actually sometimes, I think they'd won the league in recent seasons. Mbappe came from Monaco. So they were, a good team that had James Rodriguez, a Colombian, Bernardo Silva, that's some good players. He took a team that was, trying to challenge for European spaces and trying to challenge for the league to the bottom of the table to where they were almost going to get relegated to the next division below. Like, wow. that's that's I don't know how to, maybe like who won the Boston Celtics won, right? They won the NBA recently. It's like taking the Boston Celtics from challenging for the league to like the one at the bottom of the table in one season. Yeah, so for example, the Boston Celtics, I believe they won the NBA this year. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they won it recently. And The Boston Celtics, I believe they won the league this year. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe they won the league. So imagine like a manager, somebody taking the Boston Celtics from challenging for the championship to one of the teams at the bottom of the table, at the bottom of the championship.
Wow.
In 1 year.
Damn.
Yeah. So for example, Thierry Henry, amazing player. No one's ever gonna say anything bad about him as a player. No one. This is unheard of. He's a legend. But when it came to the managing and teaching what he does so well, terrible. Not good at it. And there've been other players like Gary Neville, for example. He played for Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson for all those years, won so many trophies. He was the captain. Okay, he wasn't a glamorous like striker. He was a defender, but like he was a very efficient defender, very consistent in the national team, like won so many things, right? Very successful career. But when he became a manager for Valencia in Spain, like, I don't know what happened there, but like he got beat like by Barcelona 7-0 at home. Like he was there for like 6 months as the manager, and then they had to get rid of him. Because again, Valencia, they won the league in 2001 in Spain. They're not like, Real Madrid, Barcelona, but they're one of the teams in like the top 5. And they're always challenging for Europe, trying to get as close to the number 1 as they can. So they're one of those teams, and he was effing up. So they got rid of him within even less than a season. And again, great at what he does, but when it comes to teaching it, terrible. But then you've got people like Zinedine Zidane, who are great at what they do. He was a legendary footballer, won the World Cup, won loads of Champions Leagues, Real Madrid, won the Galacticos. Incredible player, right? And then when it comes to teaching what he does and managing and organizing everything that he was doing as a manager and a coach, amazing as well. They won like 5 Champions Leagues under him. Cristiano Ronaldo was there with him. Obviously, he had Cristiano Ronaldo, but Cristiano Ronaldo was there with him. They won a couple of the leagues, like very successful as a manager and also as a player. So you get 2 types: people that are really good at teaching, or some people that are not even good at teaching. Some people that are good at what they do, or okay at what they do, or great at what they do, but they can't replicate that when it comes to teaching it. And then there are some people that are great at what they do, and they're also great at teaching it, or maybe even better at teaching it. And that's me. I'm Zinedine Zidane. I'm not Thierry Henry. I'm Zinedine Zidane. I'm good at what I do, but I'm equally as good at teaching it, if not even better. And when I teach people the piano, they learn faster than any other teacher that they've had previously. I had a student, she was actually a Spanish teacher in a school here in London, and I was teaching her the piano. Within 6 weeks, we were on song number 3, but she'd previously done 6 months. She had done 6 months with a teacher, and she'd barely gotten to 2 songs. Barely completed 2 songs. And with me, we had done 3 songs, and we had only completed 6 lessons. I always say, look, whatever it is that I get good at and I teach, I'll be in the top 5%, 1% of all of the teachers that are teaching it. Because I know if I become, for example, if I want to teach you how to cook, I'll learn obviously how to cook and get to a good level first, and I'll teach what I know. I'm going to teach you better and faster than any other teacher. I already know that. Because I know the way to teach. I know how to break it down. I know what you should know, and more importantly, I know what not to teach you. But a lot of people don't know what not to teach you, so they teach you everything. The brain can't process everything. That's why we have filters. The brain can't process everything. The motivation is going to go down because you've just got too much of an overload. It's too long. It's taking too much time. You're not getting anywhere, any results. It's just going to be a total disaster if I teach you everything. And that's what we do with the flowchart method. I try to give you the least amount of possible at the beginning, the least amount of possible that's going to give you the most amount of results for where you are right now. And then I slowly build up the difficulty and I give you a bit more. But everything stays relevant. But in the beginning, I don't just bombard you with everything because you're just going to be bamboozled. Like, what the hell's going on? I give you as little as possible so that you can process it and actually make gains. And it's like easy to process. You're making, and it's going to give you gains because I'm giving you relevant stuff, and it slowly pick it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, Andy Anser, he messaged me the other day. He messaged me. I said, "Oh, let's schedule." And he's very, very busy, right? So I was like, "Yeah, let's schedule in some sessions soon." He's on a shoot in some other country, whatever. And he's like, yeah, basically I just asked him, I was like, so he goes to Spain a lot. I said, so how's it going in Spain? Like, now that we've done less than a month. We've completed less than a month so far. And I said, yeah, so how is it now going to Spain doing the shoots at Real Madrid and other stuff? He says, yeah, it's great. Like with the Spanish that we've done, I'm feeling more confident in conversations. I'm speaking a little bit more, and he feels better when he's in the conversation. Doesn't feel not too much of an imposter syndrome. He can actually handle, a few sentences on his own already in less than 1 month. And again, I told you my student who's in Marbella, Abed, who's learning for business reasons, if within the first 3 sessions, where he goes to the restaurant every single week, the way to recognize and realize that his Spanish has improved just within 3 lessons, because I took what he already knew and I reorganized it and made him understand and make sense of what it was that he already knew. Just organize it better in his brain. Just after 3 sessions. So yeah, it happens in Spanish, of course, as well.
So it's like you're basically mastering these frameworks of how to learn and then also how to teach what you've learned. So people can really digest it fast and then get the results they want faster.
Yeah.
So it's like you're essentially just speeding up the process of learning.
Yeah, I don't like to waste time. I don't like to waste time. Like, for example, some teachers would want to drag it out so they can like get more money out of you, more lessons, and drag it out. No. I want you to learn as fast as possible. If that means that you don't do more because you got it already, that's good. That's I'm happy with that. I don't like to drag things out. I like to do as much as we can, but not too much to the point where it's just overload. So I like to go fast, but not too fast for you to handle. If you get what I mean. Yeah.
Right, so it's just fast enough for them to actually learn fast, but not feel like they're getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's like do as many reps as you can until the form goes. Not just do as many reps as you can and like you're doing terrible form and breaking your back. No, do as many reps as you can until the form goes, and then that's your limit. And then you build on that. That's what. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, like again, when it comes to learning, I just learn usually faster than the average person. This is not me gloating. This is not me like, trying to pat my own back. It's just what I've experienced. I've been around the block a little bit, I'm getting on a bit. So I've tried lots of different things. I've learned different things. And I often, when I was ice skating, I was learning faster than the people that were on the classes that I was doing. I was on like these 30-minute classes 6 times over 6 weeks, like group classes, like 20, 30 people. I didn't really learn too much, to be fair. But I would stay on the ice afterwards and free skate. People would just go home. But I would stay on the ice for like another hour and a half because the free skate was open until like, I finished at 8:30, but the free skate was open until like 9:45. And I would stay on for an extra hour and 15. And I'd ask all the guys that were, doing the hockey skaters, the figure skaters, how'd you do that? How'd you do this? Da-da-da. I remember one time a 12-year-old girl came up to, she was about 12. She was like, she skated really good though. And she came up to me. She was like, do you need help? And I was like, bear in mind, I'm a big man in my 20s with a beard and everything. And this little girl comes up to me. She says, do you need help? Like, a lot of people would be embarrassed, right? And their ego would tell them to say, no, it's okay, I'm all right. But I wasn't all right. I didn't really know what I'm doing. I'm just started out. So I said, yeah, you know what? Yeah, sure. Free game. Yeah, cool. Sign me up. And she said, okay, what you want to do? You're doing it all wrong. Your balance is this. And then she showed me some things. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And it actually helped me. you know. So yeah, that's another thing. Like, you know, advice and stuff, it can come from all areas. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. So there's a lot that you've unpacked in terms of learning and, you know, putting your ego aside and
Yeah, yeah.
getting help from someone that, you know, a lot of people would perceive as, she can't help me.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, you know, even in Colombia, I meet so many guys say, "So how is your Spanish? You've been here for a while. How's your Spanish? Like, you've been there 6 months. Oh, yeah, my Spanish is good. Yeah, yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's not the best. It's not like perfect, but like, you know, I'm good. Like, I can get around stuff." And then like somebody comes, and like a Colombian person comes, and they're in a conversation, like, okay, yeah, yeah. Just bring it down a little bit. Like, take the ego away. It's okay to say, you know, I'm still beginner, I'm still learning, I'm still figuring out things. It's okay, you know. You don't have to pretend that like you can do it all. Like, yeah, no, I'm straight. Yeah, I'm good, I'm good. Just, you know, drop the ego, because when you remove the ego, now you allow more to come in. But if you say you're already good already, you're not going to learn anything new, because you're not allowing anything. You're not allowing yourself to learn anything new. You know. But yeah, coming back to learning and teaching, I remember there's a famous skateboarder called Ryan Sheckler. He's in his 30s now, but I remember back in the days when I was like a kid, he was like a few years older, he was like 15, 16, but he was like a phenomenon. And he had a TV show on MTV or whatever. And like they would say, like he and his friends would go out skating, and they would try a new trick that they saw Tony Hawk or Kareem Campbell or somebody doing. They would want to try one of those tricks, and they said like if it took them like a month to learn it, he'll get it done in a week. If it took them like a week to learn it, he'll get it done in a day. If it took them a day, he'll do it in an hour. And it's like certain times, you know, if you know how to learn, sometimes people just say, "Oh, it's just talent. It's just." I used to suck at the piano. I used to suck at Spanish. But when you know how to work things out and know what to focus on and what not to focus on, and you work out like a pattern and a structure, you're gonna actually excel faster. You're gonna learn whatever it is you're trying to learn faster, because you know what to look for in any new thing that you learn. And that's what I'm good at doing. So I end up learning things faster. But then like I said, the Thierry Henry versus Zinedine Zidane example, but when it comes to teaching it, that's a whole different ballgame now. And I'm also equally, if not better, good at teaching exactly what I went through and putting it into you. And a lot of tutors aren't that detailed, you know, just kind of generic, teach you everything that they think you should know just because it is Spanish, but it's not necessary at that point, or not necessary at all for you to learn. Or you are a chef and they're teaching you about the names of the planets. Why are they teaching about the names of the planets when you're a chef? They should teach you what the name of a saucepan is, how to say, I am cooking, like, you know, things related to what you do, which is what I like to teach you your script, the Spanish that you want to learn, make it relevant for you so you can make the fastest gains. If you say one phrase 10 times a day, every day, but we start by learning this stuff compared to learning that phrase that you learn 10 times a day, every day, what's going to get you faster to your version of conversational? What you usually say on a day-to-day basis? Obviously learning the relevant stuff for you, you know. So when it comes to teaching, I'm just a lot more laser focused on my student. I always want to get the student to their goals rather than the goals that I give them, you know. Which is, I ask the student, what do you want at the beginning of every session? Like when it comes to piano, I say, what do you want? What do you want? To say, oh, I want to become a grade eight this and blah blah blah. Okay, I don't really do it like that. You probably best find somebody else. But you tell me I want to become conversational in Spanish, I want to have conversations with my family, with my wife, with my husband, I want to travel around, I want to get better for business. Okay, yeah, you're in the right place. Let's go. And I say, okay, what exactly do you want to do? And I'm going to do every time as soon as you tell me that, I'm doing whatever it takes to get you to that goal, as close to that goal as fast as possible. So everyone has different goals, so it requires different methods. Okay, it's all going to be the flowchart method, but it requires little tweaking here and there depending on what it is that you want to be able to do. So I will start out with what the student wants, and we're going to go in towards that direction. But what a lot of tutors don't do is that they don't really actually know what the student wants. So whatever they're teaching you is just kind of taking you here and there. It's not really going to the student's goal, you know?
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people are failing, even if they have a tutor. Like you've seen it, right? With us, some people come to us and they're like, I've been having a tutor for 6 months, but I don't really feel like I can get anywhere with this person, you know? for reasons that you just stated.
Yeah, and yeah, it's because like again, most tutors will just teach you everything and anything. I will focus on your goal. So how can we get to your goal as fast as possible? Okay, this is your goal. This is where we need to go. Okay, cool. And then I know the generic path in general, in terms of sentence structure fundamentals. I know what can give you the most results right now. If you said to me, "Oh, Jordan, I want to learn Spanish right now," we've only got 30 minutes. I know exactly what I can teach you in 30 minutes that will get you the most results right now, so that after 30 minutes, you can actually improve in a conversation than what you could do before the 30 minutes, if that makes sense. Like I always give you what you need to what you need for you to get the most out of whatever we've just done. If we've got an hour, you're gonna get the most results from me after an hour than somebody else. If that makes sense.
Because of your flowchart method.
It's just way more detailed and on the relevant stuff. Okay, I don't just teach you, okay, let's do a list of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the dog, the frog, the bat, the lion. Like, well, if you ever go into, a lot of tutors will do that. They'll give you a list of vocab, like, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting everything, your energy. You're better off just not doing that. That's not. Yeah, but you think, oh, I'm learning Spanish. Yeah, you are learning Spanish. But what kind of Spanish are you learning? Right. You know what I mean? So just because you're learning Spanish doesn't mean that it's all good. That's what a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah, and then a lot of people that said to me, "Oh yeah, I'm going to this like local in-person. I want an in-person tutor." A lot of people say that, like, "Oh yeah, I want to go to this in-person tutor," and then after 6 months, they're still bloody nowhere because they're learning what you just said. They're learning like very sequential things that don't apply to their daily life.
Yeah, it's just, and what I always say is, learning about something doesn't mean you're learning how to do it. So if you have a driving lesson and the driving instructor says, okay, let's open the bonnet, or so pop the hood. Okay, this is the carburetor, this is the piston, these are the pistons, this is the valve, and this is what this does. Oh, that's an hour. Okay, we'll see you again next week. Okay, great. You go home. So how was your driving lesson? What did you drive? Yeah, no, we learned about you learned about the car, but you didn't learn how to drive. So learning about something and learning how to do it are two different things. You know, so a lot of people do learn about Spanish. They know they write the notes and they know when this grammatical notes, like when you have this stuff in a sentence, that means that this is like this or this. But do you do it? Do you know how to do it? Do you know how to implement it into conversation? And that's the difference. And you know, the biggest measure of how well you're doing in Spanish is how did you do in the last conversation that you spoke. You know, in football, we have a saying, you're only as good as your last game, right? So in Spanish, you're only as good as your last conversation. So that's how you judge how good you are. How did you do? Were there some things that you didn't understand? Were there some things that you couldn't express? Were there big pauses and gaps where you had to think? All these little things will tell you how you're doing with your Spanish, not how long your streak is. That's not a gauge of how good your Spanish is. It's how well you do in conversations. So the more conversations you have, the better it will be.
Right, so you're introducing a lot of different new things for people to understand here, because most people just focus on their streak and they're not focused on doing good in the conversation and getting better at that.
Yeah. So going to those language apps, a lot of people focus on the streaks or the little leaderboard things that they have, which is just, you know, this just makes it into a game, you know, and you just become like a video game junkie. You know, the kid that plays PlayStation all day and his eyes go square, like you just turn into one of those people. And in the beginning, you said, oh, I want to learn Spanish. You downloaded the app, you started doing it, they give you the streak, they give you little points, leaderboard, you can see where you are against other people, other players and stuff. And then now you're more worried about that than how well am I doing in a conversation when I'm speaking Spanish. It's kind of like a comfort zone thing. You don't have to, because speaking a conversation with other people is kind of like, you know, if you do that and you might not go well, you're going to beat yourself up. Let me just stay on here. At least it tells me I'm doing good here. Yeah. It's like a drug, you know, it's like a comfort zone thing, and you got to get out of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Spanish, when I started learning Spanish, that's what I would do. And I appreciate some people are introverts, extroverts, but at the end of the day, Spanish is a communication skill. You have to, speaking to people, it's a skill of communication. It's social, right? You don't speak Spanish with sign language. You speak with your mouth, right? You have to communicate with people. So, you know, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you just gotta put yourself into conversations. And I wouldn't say I'm neither, but I remember I put myself into these conversations. You know, I just put myself in these places where there's gonna be Latinos to speak, and you have to do that. And some people will see my videos and be like, "Oh, I seen you talking to like girls and on the street and talking to random people on the street." Yeah, it wasn't even always like that. And going away from Spanish, going back into high school, I was actually pretty shy as a kid. I remember like in football, people would I would just be quiet. I wouldn't really be talking out. I'll talk to you one on one or him on one on one, but I wouldn't talk with everybody and outspoken. I was like, wow, how did these kids do that? Like I just was so in my shell. Girls would like I wasn't a weird kid or I wasn't like, just strange or anything. I had friends, I'd like to say I was kind of cool, but I just, wasn't so social and like, outspoken with everybody. When girls would like me, want to talk to me, and then my friends like, yeah, go go go, and I just didn't know what to say. I didn't like being shy. So I made a conscious decision to become more confident. I went on YouTube, how to become more confident. Stare at somebody in the eye until they look away, not until you look away. Little things like that. Go try to speak to somebody in the street that you don't know. Try to speak to a girl. Like, so I worked on it, and it helped me as an adult because now I'm not that same teen anymore. But the point I'm trying to make is that this has nothing to do with Spanish. It kind of is because it's communication, but it's like you have to take yourself outside your comfort zone eventually. I'm not saying just do it all in one go, but like little bit by bit. You gotta, if you struggle to have conversations, you gotta put yourself in that space. We even with the role play, it's a simulation of a conversation, but it's still having conversations. Okay, but it's just you don't have okay, I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't like this is all new. This is all like it's structured and organized and it's a safe environment. But some people, they still might not show up because they're, a bit nervous to speak in front of others. And again, like whether it be on the street in conversations or in one of our role play sessions, you gotta get out of your shell and you gotta, get over that barrier. Because otherwise, if you never get past that kind of barrier of fear of speaking with people, your Spanish it's not gonna go anywhere. And that's the harsh reality. You have to get past that mental block.
So I guess the next question is, do you help people get past that mental block?
Yeah, we help people get past it. So, I mean, it's not something that happens in one go, right? It's not overnight. But I help my students with the mental block for sure, because it's part of the game. Like in anything you do, if your mind's not right, if you're not mentally ready, you're not gonna be able to perform. And speaking Spanish with strangers is performing, right? So I make them aware that this is important, and the same things that I'm telling you right now about the communication skills and when I was a kid, how I wasn't so confident and stuff like that, and how you got to put yourself out there and get outside your comfort zone. I make them realize that as much as they need to. So if I know they obviously got it, then I'm not really going to hammer it home. But if I know that they're saying, "Oh, I didn't practice," or "This is that," or "I didn't show up to role play," I keep instilling it because communication is a skill in itself, actually. So I used to work with children and young adults with learning difficulties, and that really changed my life and my perspective on how my perspective on communication and how I speak with people, because you have to have more patience. You can't be like this with somebody with autism, because that's just like you just can't do that most of the time. And can you really test your communication skills? So yeah, Spanish is obviously a skill of communication. It's a social skill, and yeah, I help my students for sure with that, and I make them aware of it. That you've got to get past that mental blocks to have these conversations and get out of your shell.
Awesome. Right, so we've covered a lot here. So what else do you want to share with people? What other tips and tricks have you got up your sleeve? Did you share everything?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's anything, but no, I think we've covered everything.
All right, cool. So the next thing is like, where do people find out more about you? If someone's watching this, they're like, oh, this guy's cool, I like him. Where do people find out more about you?
So you can find us on Yospanish. Actually, wait, before we get there, I only like to teach people that are serious. Okay, so this Yospanish, the flowchart method, is only for serious people. So if anybody out there is like not serious. If somebody comes to me and you're not serious, and I'm not trying to teach you, you know. So for example, with me, there's like, you know, I need to know that you're about it. If I feel like you're just, oh, I would like to do it, we're both wasting our time, you know. So if you're committed and you have motivation and drive and discipline, and you know that this is something that you really want to do. Sorry, I think I sprayed you there.
I was like, where's that
and this is something that you really want to do, then yeah, let's go. But if you're on the fence still, or it's kind of something that you would like to do, or oh yeah, no, we don't work with people like that. We only work with people that want to be winners. You know, if there's something you want to achieve and you want to, you know, do something great, and you want to get there, conversational, fluent, beyond, yeah, let's go. So yeah, you can find us at yospanish.com. So the link will be below the video, but yospanish.com, and you can go to, if you're on TikTok, you can go to yospanishofficial, and yeah, at yospanish.com you'll see we offer three services, three options. You can join the role play sessions 3 times a week. We spoke about that, where you can practice in conversation, nice structured, organized conversation with the coach, or you can have one-to-one sessions with one of our coaches, or you can have one-to-one sessions with myself. And yeah, so again, that's yospanish.com, and the TikTok is yospanishofficial.
Nice, awesome. So yeah, I think that wraps it up. Everything was said and we covered everything. So yeah, if you want to go to Your Spanish, again, full transparency, like I mentioned at the start, I'm partner in this business. I'm just behind the scenes though, and just making sure everything works well and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks Jordan for coming on.
Thank you for having me on the Aaron Darko show.
You're welcome. All right, take care.